Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Martin, and on this episode I have Rob Hann. Rob is a New York City-based road trip photographer who captures places time forgot. He has over 900 commissioned portraits, a book called Diesel Fried Chicken, which was published by the Artist Edition in 2018, and limited edition prints that are available through Clic Gallery in New York City and Larsen Gallery in Stockholm, Sweden. Now let's hear a word from our podcast partner and get to the show. The Life of Phys Podcast is lit by Hobolight. Hobolight is on a mission to empower creators to elevate their creativity with lighting kits made to last and built to inspire. These lights are bold, beautiful, and powerful because Hobolight believes that your lights deserve to be seen. To learn more, follow them on Instagram at HOBOLITE.
I'm Rob Hann. I'm originally from England. I've been in the United States since 2003. I actually had a spell here the first half of the 80s. I was in New York and in Austin, Texas. And then since I came back, I was in New York for like 19 years. I'm now living in Jersey City, New Jersey, and also in Joshua Tree, California. We're lucky enough to have two places and split our time between the two. And I'm a photographer, and I got into it pretty late in life. I bought a camera with the idea to be a photographer when I was 31 years old. And I'm going to be 70 this year, so been at it a while now.
I as well started late in life. I started in my early 40s.
Okay.
With the dreams of creating pieces that will eventually hang in people's homes 30, 40 years from now. So that's my end goal.
Yeah, well, that's very achievable, I think.
So, Rob, I see you've worked with some pretty big names in the industry. You've done quite a bit in your time in the photography industry. Do you want to talk about some of the people you've shot with?
Yeah, so when I first I have a bit of background here. When I first started, one of my dark secrets is I was a model back then, and I didn't start doing that till I was like 30 years old, 31, and I wasn't sure how long I would do it for. It turns out I did it for 10 years. But I thought, what can I do next? I didn't go to school, never had a career as such. And being in that world, I knew photographers. I was around photography. I was looking at stuff I liked, didn't like. And I thought, well, maybe I could be a photographer. So I bought a camera. I was 31. And I started shooting other models. Now, my girlfriend at the time, and so I thought, okay, I'll shoot men. So I did that, but I was kind of shooting it in more of a portrait style anyway. And after a while, I'd been in that industry for some time, and some of the excitement and glamour of it had worn off. And I was looking around because initially I was thinking I'd do fashion, like men's fashion. And then I went to a big show that had started in MoMA in New York, but I actually saw it in London, and it was Irving Penn. And I bought the catalog, and his portraits were just fantastic. And so I used to sit and look through that kind of like every night. And I thought, maybe I could do that. It's one portrait, but he met anyone who was anyone. He shot Louis Armstrong, Picasso, just anyone you could think of. And so that was my aim. And I shot friends and, put a portfolio together. And I shot stuff for probably almost all black and white. I shot stuff for maybe 8 years before I started then showing. I moved to London. I was living in Milan at the time. Then I was in Paris, and then I was living in London, and the modeling thing was kind of fizzling out. And so I thought I'd better, try pushing the photography. And I started to go see magazines with my portfolio. And the first breaks I got were in music. There used to be a thing in England called the NME, which was this big weekly rock newspaper that when I was growing up, I used to read it, every inch of it. I was totally into it. And they gave me some work. The first thing I did actually was a little magazine called Lime Lizard, which I photographed Lydia Lunch, who was this kind of punk poetess. And that issue came out, and then the magazine folded. But I really got going with the Enemy, and I was doing music, but they had a media page where they would have they'd review movies and things like that. And a lot of the other photographers weren't really interested in that because it was all like rock and roll. So I started getting those jobs, and I shot a lot of really cool people, actors like Jeff Goldblum and Tom Hanks and all kinds of people, writers and directors, and that was great. So I did that for doing that, I started getting. So I was also shooting music, and through shooting for the NME, which was kind of fairly. It was well thought of, within the industry. And so I started getting work with record companies too, mostly doing publicity pictures. And it was pretty much portraits. I do bands. And that was something I did for quite a few years. But that's quite a while ago now. That was mostly in the 90s. I moved to New York in 2003. And I was still doing that kind of thing, but the work was starting to drop off. So what happened was magazines were not doing so well, and the record business wasn't either, because of the internet. And my work so there was less money, there was less work. And I mean, I know you asked me one question, but I'm kind of like, I'm launching here on the kind of life story. And I had some years earlier started taking road trips for my own pleasure and taking photos in the United States. And because the work was really getting thin and I was starting to get in debt, I thought maybe I can try and sell some of these pictures I've been taking on the road. And I'd seen people selling stuff on the streets in New York, set up a table. And so kind of out of desperation, really, I did the same thing. And I thought maybe this can help pay the rent, And it started going well right away. And I'd been out there for couple of months when a woman who had a store called Clic, at the time it was a photo gallery, that since she's got like, I think 12 stores, and they sell a lot of photography, but a lot of lifestyle stuff, and they sell everything now. It's a kind of a beautifully curated, cool store. And she saw me, liked my work, and said, maybe we can start selling some big prints of this. A couple of months later, a gallery owner from Stockholm with a sort of a Chelsea-style gallery saw me too, and did the same thing. He gave me a show in Sweden. I've had like 3 shows in Sweden now, and those are large limited edition prints, up to like 50 by 60 inches. But it's all the same work as the stuff and I'm still selling on the street. I've just got back from California. I'm going to go out next weekend, get back out there for the season. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. That was a long answer to a short question.
I love hearing the history. I love hearing about where you started, where you came from. The fact that you just went out there and sold on the street and people saw your work, and that moved everything in a different direction.
Yeah, much to my surprise. You know, I tell you what I thought. So I thought, because I was thinking the idea would be maybe to, get into some galleries and this and that. And actually I did, to simplify the story, I did miss something out. I did have work in a Chelsea gallery called Clampart, which is a good gallery. But, I'd sell the odd thing, but it wasn't really going anywhere. And I thought by going out on the street selling these prints, pretty cheaply, smaller prints, that would be a backward step and that would rule out that kind of thing, And I went to speak with Brian, who owned the gallery, told him what I was doing, and, that was kind of the end of that career. But I felt I had to do it. And but actually it really launched me into, I gave up doing the I had this thing where, I don't know, maybe it was an identity thing, or I couldn't concentrate on more than one thing at once. But once I started selling the prints, I didn't really want to be getting commissioned work anymore to go shoot someone, a portrait or whatever. I found it difficult to be both things. So I decided I've got to go with this. Got to go. Once I'd started selling the big prints, I gave up on the other thing. I got some calls for work I would have really thought was good before, but I'm like, that's not who I am anymore. And I'd done it for quite a while, and I guess my interest had waned in doing the portraits, and I was more excited by shooting whatever I wanted and hopefully selling it,
And that's what makes it even more important is you had an opportunity to do something you'd done for years, but this new avenue that you found was new, it was exciting. And that's what a lot of people need to understand is when you have an opportunity to go right or go left mm-hmm. is what you've done in the past. It's going to bring you some income, but right is new. Potential is unlimited at that point because you really don't know what you're stepping into. Sometimes the right choice is to move right.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing is, I enjoyed shooting the commission stuff, but there's quite a bit of pressure with it. I was talking about shooting some of those people. I would get the way it usually would work is we'd go into a hotel room, for example, where someone was promoting a movie. We would get 30 minutes. The journalists would do like 25, and I'd get 5 minutes, and got to come up with the goods. And I've had situations where I shot David Byrne and I had 2 minutes, and I shot Busta Rhymes where I was told I had 1 minute.
Oh, wow.
And you're walking into a room. I mean, it's crazy. And so there's a certain pressure, and then you have to go back to the photo editor and hope they like it, And most of the time it was fine, but it's, so that can get a bit, tedious after a while. Or you might be doing something where you got more time with a record company, but that, they were paying much more money than, say, a magazine or whatever. And there's a certain pressure with that as well. And lots of people have got to be kept happy. They've all got to like it. Whereas when I'm going out on road trips, I see something I like, I shoot it, hopefully it comes out okay, then I'll try to sell it. And it's a lot more relaxing. I mean, obviously, if I hadn't been selling anything, it wouldn't be so relaxing. But it's gone pretty well, and I basically make my living doing that now.
That's amazing. That's the goal. That's the end dream right there.
Yeah.
Is to be able to make a living from your art.
Yeah.
Do you shoot all film or a combination?
Yeah. No, I only shoot film. I've never owned a digital camera. I've got an iPhone. that what I'll do is I'll, when I shoot something, I'll take a picture of it with my iPhone as well, just so I remember what it is I shot, and I'll also often, I'm shooting, I'm out on the road, and I'll send stuff back to my girlfriend that evening, say, hey, this is what I shot, So I kind of use that to keep a record, and it's going to look a little different because the iPhone's got, a bit of, well, I've got a kind of simple iPhone that's just got one lens, and it's a wider angle than the camera I shoot with. So it's going to look a bit different. Sometimes the iPhone does like an amazing job of like exposures and things in tricky situations. And I'm thinking, well, I hope it comes out as well on the real camera. But yeah, no, I never, when the whole digital thing really kicked in years ago, I, at that point, I'd bought, I was shooting with a medium format film camera. And it's actually the same camera I use now, which was, I've had for more than 25 years. It's a Mamiya 7.
Yeah.
And I just get 10 shots on a roll. But the quality I was getting was like, really, really good from that camera. And early on, the digital cameras that I would have had to go for, there was like the Hasselblad medium format. And I was in England at the time, and and they were, I don't know, they were like 30,000 pounds or something. It was like more than a really nice car. And I'm like, well, I can't afford that, And so I kind of thought, well, eventually I will go digital. And if I'd stayed in that world where I was being commissioned to shoot stuff, I would have had to, because they would want it quick, and they want that the way of working changed. But I wasn't doing that, I quit doing that. And at a certain point, I realized, I like shooting with this camera. It works for me. It's I just sort of thought, well, why change? And the good thing is, I'm not a very technical person. And what I like is, I know this camera so well, it's so simple, that I don't have to think about any technical issues really. And so, I've got one lens, which is a fixed lens. I use a handheld light meter, but it's very, very simple. And I don't have to think about anything except what's in front of me, more or less. And so who knows how long I'll keep doing it, but I've had that camera, like I say, for probably more than 25 years. And I don't have to think about getting a new one,
It just works.
Yeah, it works for me. And I've got nothing against digital cameras. I know I've heard you guys talking about gear on the podcast before. And frankly, I don't think it matters, just whatever it's good for you. I don't care, it's just as long as you're happy with what's coming out the other end,
It's true. When I first started, I always thought, they dangle the carrot from the next great thing in front of you. Right. And I always thought, oh, well, that would make this better. Yeah. And for a long time, I would switch on a whim just to try to find what worked. But I'd always come back to Fujifilm. So every time I left, I would spend a couple months out with something different, and it would rotate right back into Fujifilm.
Yeah.
I realized that Fujifilm is the camera that works for me. And I made the hard decision of letting go of my medium format because I wanted to have one camera that I could record video on and shoot my stills. So I just sold the medium format, went back to the X. I've got one camera, one lens now, and I'm just going to continue to shoot photos.
Yeah, obviously there are lots of different ways to do things, but I find for myself just having that one camera, one lens is helpful. You get to know it so well that I think it can help you with your image making. I did at one point buy myself a Hasselblad, what is it, a CM 500, I think, kind of classic Hasselblad film camera, because I kind of felt, oh, I should probably have a Hasselblad, you know. And I found I didn't like it. You know, the camera was a beautiful thing, but I didn't like the square format. I didn't really know what to do with that. And also the way of shooting, you know, you've got like the buttons kind of like on the front of the thing, and the whole thing, it just wasn't working for me. I didn't feel comfortable with it. And I kept it for a long time. And then at one point when I was going through a period where I was broke, I did sell it kind of reluctantly, just because it's such a beautiful thing. But I barely used it, you know. And I realized that that format just wasn't for me, you know.
Even on the digital medium format, I struggled with that square image. I like the wide profile, so it took a while to get used to that.
I actually have got I've got a 4x5, an old what you call it, you know, like the old press cameras that I bought online, that I shot a few times. But you know, thinking that would be great for the landscape stuff, it's a very complicated way of working. And one time I was at my lab. Well, actually, one time I went to see Todd Heido giving a talk in New York, and you know, I'd seen those big books like houses, and you know, and somehow I had assumed, maybe just because it was big, that he was shooting on you know, 4x5 or 8x10. But he, at that time at least, he said that he'd shot, I think he said he shot that stuff on the Mamiya 7, which is the camera I use. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, I can probably use it okay and get good stuff. And then I was in my lab in New York one time, and when I get large prints made, they'll put them up on this big metal wall with magnets. And one of my prints was there, and there was a print next to it that I could see was shot on a 4x5, because there's like this little notch on the edge of the film. And obviously, you know, the light conditions and everything make a difference. But the print that I'd shot with the you know, with the medium format actually looked better to me than the large format. And so I thought, well, there's probably no need. I know that there can be a different look to it. And there's a guy that I greatly admire called Brian Shootmap, great photographer. And he's done beautiful portraits with the large format camera, and there's a feel to it, you know, as the way the field of focus drops away sharply behind the person. There's got a different vibe to it. So there is that. So, you know, maybe if I've got more patience, I will dig that out and go back to it, you know.
It's hard to change when you have something that works so easy for you, though. You know that camera, you know the Mamiya 7 so well that you can just pretty much capture anything you need.
Well, I mean, it's not great for doing everything, but it's good for doing what I do. But one thing I will say about cameras, you know, different size cameras and everything, you know, I actually haven't been doing any portraits in a while. I did go through a phase of shooting some regular people that I find out on the road, but I haven't been doing that. But what I will say is, if you're shooting portraits, depending what kind of thing you want to get, you might just want something that's very candid and flowing and easy. But if you approach someone with, you know, an 8x10 camera or whatever, you know, and you've got that thing and all this, when they're standing in front of that, they're going to take it seriously, you know, and you're going to get a different feel And I think if you have something that you pull out of your pocket, they're going to treat it differently. And then probably they're going to give a big smile or, whatever. And the bigger the camera gets, I think they're going to be like, whoa, this. And maybe you'll get a different kind of a dignified feel to the portrait, So I think people react differently to different types of cameras in that way,
Yeah, Ryan HK from Calgary, episode 4, he shoots portraits on an 8x10.
Right, I remember that one. Yeah.
Great interview. That was where I felt like I finally kind of came into my own. And it was 2 hours of fun.
Great.
Do you have a preferred film stock you shoot on?
I shoot always with, so basically I've been shooting color for years. Initially I was totally a black and white guy. And I used to do lith prints, which is, you do it it's a different kind of developer. It's got a very distinctive look. You can never really do two prints the same, but I developed this style with a look and a feel with that. And I was really a black and white guy. Shooting for magazines, I said I did the music magazines, but I also went on to shooting for, like Sunday newspaper supplements, national papers for their magazine. And they'd often want color, or they want black and white and color or whatever. So I used to shoot color, but I never felt I was very good at the color. I had something distinctive with my black and white. I had a kind of a rough look to it, but it was distinctive. But with the color, it was okay. It was technically fine, but it took me years to really get my head around shooting color well, I think. So anyway, and now even though I sometimes will see black and white photography that I admire, I only ever want to shoot in color at the moment. I don't see things in black and white anymore. And so I shoot with Kodak Portra, and I prefer to shoot 160, and often I'm in places with good light and whatever. But I'll also shoot 400, and I've got into shooting some stuff at night or twilight or whatever, and with long exposures. And the 400 just makes that exposure a bit shorter. And so I'll use the 400 at night. I blow stuff up pretty big, and it actually, even the 400, it looks really good when it's blown up. So that's it. I've got the 400 is a bit more expensive. Oh, it's all really expensive now. But so basically, Kodak Portra is a color negative film, and this is all medium format. It's all 120. I get 10 shots on a roll, which also I think, as I said before, lots of ways of shooting, but I think that's been helpful for me to make me disciplined about what I shoot. And if I can, I'll shoot one frame of a thing. And if I get like really excited about something, I will shoot more to just make sure I've got it covered. And often with the nighttime stuff, because I'm kind of guessing the exposures, often I'll shoot more to make sure I've got that. But I like that it keeps me, I'm not going crazy shooting a lot of stuff because it's expensive. I see some people shooting, so many frames, and I'm thinking when they're editing that's going to be kind of a nightmare, and fill up your computer and one thing and another. Because what I do is although I shoot film, all of my output are like are digital. They're, I scan the negatives. I scan my own negatives. I've got an old Nikon Coolscan 9000 ED that I do all of mine with. And then for the big ones that I have a lab do the prints and the scans. But it's all digitized, and that way I can tweak the stuff in Photoshop and get it looking the way I want it to be. But so it starts with film, but it's kind of a hybrid, really, you know.
Yeah, that's what's so neat about it. Everything now is you can get that scan and you can still do all the editing you want in Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, whatever you choose.
Right. And now, and like I say, I don't know about digital cameras, and I see some fantastic work, but I do know that with this camera, I get my big prints look like really good. It holds up well at that size, you know.
Yeah, and that's really what's important. As long as the work is coming out the way you want it, just keep using it.
Yeah.
So what led you down the road to release a book? What was the thought process behind that and coming up with such an incredible name?
Well, actually, so at the time I was living in London, and I was shooting a lot of stuff for, I was shooting 3 or 4 times a week for magazines and things, portraits, and sometimes live music, this kind of thing. But I felt like I really wanted to take a big road trip in the United States and take some pictures along the way. So I flew to LA, and I think it was like 13 or 14 days was this trip. I decided I'd drive down to Marfa, Texas, and back again. So kind of through the desert Southwest. I didn't really know what I was going to shoot, but so the first day, I got to LA, and I drove. Actually, funny enough, the first night of that trip I spent in a motel in Joshua Tree, which many years later we ended up living there, but I wasn't to know that. And so, I got up that morning and started driving, thinking about what I was doing. And I was like, I was kind of excited by what I was seeing. It was all totally new to me. It was very different to what I knew in England. And I thought, maybe I could do a book. You're driving along in the car by yourself, you start getting all these thoughts, and I was kind of excited by the whole thing. Maybe I could do a book of this stuff. So when I got, and I kind of, I think I took a picture of this broken down old gas station, and I liked the look of that. And I kind of thought, yeah, if I can get things along these lines. And then I saw a few humorous signs, and it was all coming together, and it kind of felt like it held together as one thing. And I got back to London, and actually I liked a lot of what I got. Some of that stuff I'm not so keen on now, but some of the stuff I still sell, actually, from that first trip, which was 2001. But that was the idea from the very start, from the very first day of that trip. I thought it could be a book. So I got back and I looked at it and I thought, this stuff's okay, but I need to do one more trip. And so I flew back, I did another trip, and then I moved to America, and I just kept taking the trips, thinking, I need a bit more. And then there were some lean years, and then where I couldn't take trips, and then, the whole thing of doing the book was going to cost a lot of money. So I ended up shooting stuff for like 17 years of road trips before I did the book. So it was there from the very start, the idea, but it took, and actually I'm glad that it took me that long. Because after I'd done a couple of trips, I went to a book fair in London and showed the work to some people. And there was one like German publisher, not like Steidl or a big name, but they kind of liked it. But their idea for it was, I don't know, I thought it was a bit tacky, what they wanted to do with the whole thing. And I didn't do that. but I'm glad that at that point I didn't get the go ahead with anybody, because it just, that time gave me the opportunity to make the body of work much stronger. It would have been a lot weaker if I'd got it done after a couple of years. And then after I got to a certain point, I thought, well, I might as well just keep going till I've really got it down, So I was glad it took that long. I'm about to do another, which now we're looking at, I don't know, maybe 6 years later, but I've got quite a lot of stuff that I like. And and the name, right? So the name, I think names are really important, and it's hard to come up with a good name. And I did have a name for a long time in mind, and that was I Dream a Highway, which is a beautiful Gillian Welch song. And I liked that. But over time, I realized the nature of the photos I was taking didn't quite fit with that. That's a very romantic kind of title. And it didn't cover what I was doing really, because I had humor in there. It was a bit more gritty. It was quirky. There was romance too, but I thought it's not quite right. And I thought for a long time about names. And then, one of the photos I had taken is a sign in West Texas, and it says Diesel Fried Chicken. And it's diesel and it's fried chicken, but the spacing there, there's no spacing there. And it looks like it's Diesel Fried Chicken, which, and I thought, oh, that's a perfect name for the book. And I'm really pleased with it. And I don't think I can come up with one as good again, but I do have a name now in mind for the new book. It's taken me a long time as well, that I think is going to fit what I'm doing.
Perfect. Do you have an ETA when that book might come to fruition?
I've been saying the last couple of years, like this year, but I think there's a very good chance it will be this year, before the end of this year. And if it isn't, it will have been, the whole process will have been started, and it would be into next year. But I think it might be this year. I've definitely got the material. One thing that's kind of interesting and a challenge is that in the last year or two, I've started doing something a little different, where once upon a time or for years and years and years, I was just shooting things I'd come across, things that intrigued me. But I've started doing something where I've been introducing some objects into the landscape. So I'm actually kind of setting things up. It's in the same kind of places I'm shooting the other thing. Very recently, like last week, just before leaving California, I was doing something else with some lighting. And so I've started manipulating the images a lot more. And although I'm shooting on film, it's really there, but it's not just stuff I've found. And, I was sort of thinking, well, can this work together with the other stuff? I think it can. And I think my concept for the book and the title for the book will help that. But we'll see, But I've kind of started changing the way I'm working a little. I think partly because I've been going out to Joshua Tree in California for the last few winters and shooting things around that area. And although it's a fascinating, beautiful area, I found myself kind of, well, I can't shoot that again. I already shot it, and I can't, and so I started making stuff up, to be able to keep shooting. I think that's part of it. And my interest has shifted a little in the type of images that I'm attracted to. But we'll see, it's good to change, I guess. I really enjoy it. I like how it looks. I'm not sure where it's going because, I've been dependent on selling my work. And I'm still shooting the other stuff too. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it can work.
It's always interesting when you add a new element to what has worked in the past. So you've just kind of tweaked the recipe a little bit.
Yeah, it got me enthused again. Hey, this is something different.
So a big part of the life of Phys is, obviously we've talked about this, is the connection between mental health and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you could add into how the two work together?
Um, yeah, I think probably being creative, doing something creative is probably good for everyone. And that might be an art practice. It might be having a garden or sewing or whatever. I think creating something that wasn't there before is a good feeling, and that's probably a good thing for everyone. Um, I think I know that um, I get a buzz from going out and shooting. I enjoy that, and that helps. I I think one thing, I've been thinking about it a little bit because I've heard some of your other podcasts, and although I don't struggle too much with that kind of thing, I have my moments, but I think because I am a photographer and have been a photographer for some years, it's given me like an identity. It's given me something to feel good about, you know, uh, even beyond the actual shooting. And I'm quite unusual in that a lot of the time I'm not shooting anything. I've got friends that walk around in the city with a camera all the time and shoot stuff all the time. And it's getting a bit different now when I'm having an extended period in California. But before that, I'd go out on a 10-day trip or a 14-day trip, maybe once a year. And that's when I'm shooting. But what I am doing is, so I'm like, now I'm back here. I'll be on the street. I'm only doing 3 days a week now. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday with my work on the street, um, sharing it with people, talking about it, living with it, thinking about what I will shoot and this, that, and the other. Um, and so even though I'm not shooting, I'm still being a photographer and thinking about it and one thing and another. And I think that is very good. I feel good about it. I'm not doing some crappy job that I really wish I wasn't doing or whatever. And so, and then it certainly does feel good when I'm out shooting. But yeah, I guess that's what I've got to say about it. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I take a camera every day with me,
Right.
and it's it's weird. It's kind of like a security blanket, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. It stays in my bag
Yeah.
99% of the time. I don't pull it out to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But I walked home from work the other day, and it's about 2.5 miles. And I decided I would just shoot photos on the way home. So I
Mm-hmm.
started shooting, signs and rusted out sections of buildings and rusted train cars. And it was a lot of fun. And it's something that, I'm going to hopefully through the summer, I'll incorporate more of these quick little photo shoots on this walk home and
Yeah.
just try to build something from it. But as long as I have my camera with me, I know that the day is going to be okay.
Something just occurred to me. So I did a trip a few years ago where I flew to Atlanta and rented a car and was shooting stuff throughout the South. And I was shooting a lot of kudzu, which is this invasive plant, kind of like a big ivy that covers everything. It's crazy. Um, but on the second day of this shoot, I got in a car wreck. Um, Only one I've ever had, but it was, the car was totaled And I was pretty shook up, I kind of hurt my hand, but more than that, I was just physically, I was, it really threw me. I was nervous and bummed out, and I had to get another car, and I had to carry on with the trip. I think it was like a 14-day trip or something, and I was really jumpy when I was driving. Anything that kind of came towards me, and I was nervous, and I was pretty stressed and freaked out, and just trying to keep it together. But when I was shooting, when I would get out of the car, I'd see something and I'd shoot it. That's all that was on my mind, and that felt good. That was the only. It was a tough trip, but that was the only time throughout that trip when I just felt good, and all of that stress, the other stuff that was worrying me, just vanished. So that was a good thing.
It's amazing what a box that takes pictures can do for us.
Yeah, and I there are probably other pursuits as well, but you can just get lost in that. Well, I know there are. My partner, we've been together many years. She's a sculptor, and when she's there doing that, there's nothing else going on. She just gets lost in doing the sculpture.
Exactly. Any other plans? Any other trips coming up?
No, not really. I mean, something might come up, but probably now I'm going to be here on the East Coast. But I live in Jersey City now, which is it's like on the Hudson River, right across from downtown Manhattan. So it's it's more or less like being in New York, because there's a river, there's a PATH train, which is like a subway, where it's like takes me 7 minutes to be in Manhattan. So I'm going to be here. I'll be out selling on the street. I sell through the galleries. I'm really excited to get this. So this is interesting. I've been shooting stuff since January that I haven't seen yet. And I know how that goes. That's how I do it. It requires some patience, but I'm used to it. And I hadn't thought too much about it. But now that I'm back and I dropped film off a couple of days ago, I'll get it back after the weekend, and I'm anxious to see it, So I'll get that film back. I'll start scanning, getting new stuff, seeing how it works with the old stuff, making new prints and all of that. So that's and then really start looking into doing the book, getting the book together. So that's kind of my main focus at the moment. And then I may go back to visit in Joshua Tree for a little while, but basically probably won't be back there until like after Christmas. And then, there's already things that I'm thinking to shoot out there. I mean, I know it's kind of crazy, but maybe as you get older, you can have a bit more patience. It probably seems wild to someone that, I'm not planning to shoot again for like another 9 months or something, or maybe not that, but anyway, that's the way I do it.
It sounds like you have enough to keep you busy for that 9 months.
Yeah, probably. Hope so.
That's the way I feel about the podcast. I'm so booked up until July that I don't have time to go shoot photos, but I'm okay with it because this is where I'm still a photographer. I'm still talking photography, but I'm just doing another pursuit that, brings me joy.
Yeah. And you'll probably find a way to get more of a balance with that, where, obviously the photography is important to you, and, you'll start working that back in again, I imagine. Yeah.
I'll have enough episodes recorded over the next 2 months that I'll be able to run right through the summer. So June I've scheduled pretty light. July and August I haven't scheduled any recordings, so I'm just going to run episodes right through. And then I'll come back in September with, once a week, give me my time back, but still be able to produce, a podcast that people have enjoyed listening to.
Yeah, no, I think you've done well so far. You've been very productive. And I think one thing with podcasts, I think it's good to be, to be reliable and, keep putting them out. If I've had a podcast and I like to listen to it, say once a week, and then it goes missing for like 3 or 4 weeks or something, it's not good. And so I think that's the way to build it and for people to enjoy it is to be regular with it. And you seem to be doing that for sure. Yeah.
I'm trying. The last 2 weeks has been tough. I've had really busy weeks at work, and I just finished tomorrow's episode at like 6:30 this morning, editing. Wow. So getting it ready to go up at 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Wow.
Then I have 2 recordings tomorrow. And then I believe I don't have any. I'm trying not to book anything during the week. I'm just trying to focus on my job and being able to edit another episode in the mornings before work. And then I run right through, and I've got a couple days I've taken off just to have a day.
We did. One that I really enjoyed was, he's not a photographer. The guy, he's an indigenous artist.
Brandon Gabriel.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I looked at his art, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And as much as I enjoy hearing the photographers, I know that you talked about doing other kinds of artists. I find listening to any creative person, if they're a writer, a painter, photographer, whatever, I find that interesting. I don't, as you can tell, I'm not that much of a gear person. And so that's a part of it that, it kind of goes over my head a bit. But just hearing people's stories, their creative process and all that, I always find that really interesting.
I originally started, I was only going to do photographers because that's what I know.
Yeah.
And then Brandon is a really close personal family friend. He helped me on my journey to find my home community and my birth parents.
Yeah.
So when I decided, when I asked him and I said, hey man, I would love you to come on and be my first step away from the photography aspect. He was instantly said yes. Sent him a copy of it a couple days before it was released. And he's like, man, I've listened to every episode. I think I'm obsessed with your podcast. Huh. I just love how you're giving people a space, and you're very calm. You're not interfering with the story too much. And what you're doing is great. Which is hard to hear for me. It's great, but it's hard to hear because I'm super critical of myself. So I put an episode out and I don't want to know anything that it's doing.
I think a quality that you have is that you come across as being very sincere, no bullshit. You just, you care about what you're doing, and you're humble, and that's great. I like that.
I appreciate that. I do have authors coming on, which is great. I'm trying to get some other indigenous artists on. Roy Henry Vickers is a very well-known artist up here. He's when he has time in his schedule, he'll be on.
Right.
And I really want to just spread it to anybody, whether they're an illustrator, whether they're a painter, a carver, an indigenous dancer, a musician. I have my first musician coming up on May 6th, who's a local guy here that I randomly shot while he was playing on a outdoor patio of a restaurant, probably 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago. Wow. And we just had a connection from that one photo. Right. And, I asked him, hey, I haven't had a musician on. Would you like to come on? And then I think as I start to understand how connected the creative mindset is through all the different avenues of being a creative, I can start branching out more in these different avenues and in different fields and different genres of creativity. So, I think it just has the ability to keep growing.
I find I can totally relate to anybody that is trying to do something creative. When I hear them talk, I can I can relate to that. There's a lot of connections, I think.
So Rob, where's the best place for people to find you?
So, well, my Instagram, which is just rob.hann. That's rob.hann, two N's. And then my website is robhann.com. So it's all pretty simple.
Pretty straightforward. Perfect. And yeah, I see you have your prints and everything for sale on there.
Yeah, yeah. The small ones, which are the same ones I sell on the street, they're all for sale on my website. And then the big limited edition ones, I sell through a place called Clic and a place called Larsen Warner in Sweden. But all that info is on the site.
I appreciate your time. I'm a
Very
big fan of your work. So I always.
So did you just like see it on Instagram or something?
The podcast?
No, my work.
Oh, your work, how I found you? I always browse through the search bar for things that interest me. So I think I was looking for other people who shot forgotten things. I love to shoot forgotten items. And it popped up, and I think it might have been a gas station. That was the first image that popped up in there, and I was like, that color profile is insane. And I was like, click.
That's probably the one I was talking about from that was on the first roll on the first day of that first trip I took. That's probably.
And then, so then I looked at some more photos in your feed, and I was like, I really like this work. And I was like, click. And I always just follow along, and I look, and, I eventually start connecting with things. So like you've taken photos that bring up something in my past that I remember, like the old barns or farmhouses that are out in the middle of nowhere. No one's been there forever, but I see it, and I'm like, okay, I remember driving through Eastern Oregon and seeing things just like this.
Yeah.
So it brings me back. So each photo tells a story. You have your story, but I love the fact that I see them and I can create a story from what I see.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, I like that. I like, one thing I like with a photograph is it kind of makes you ask a question. Like it might be, what's going on here? Or even though my pictures tend to be very simple, very straightforward in the composition or whatever. They're usually, I like there to be like another level to it. So whereas you look at it, it's a straightforward photo, but you're not quite sure what you're looking at. And you're like, what's going on here? I like that, if I can get that. Oh,
the way you do it is great. Another one of my favorite photographers is Jason Lee. So I think there was probably a connection in there somewhere between what I've seen him do. And then I saw your stuff and I was like, man, there's just so many possibilities in these images. You could be there with a group of 10 people, 10 different images, and they'd all be different.
Right.
Everybody has a different perspective, how they carry a different focal length, things like that. So that's what drew me in. And, now I'm a huge fan, and I'm going to keep looking.
Yeah, Jason, he's got a photo store, doesn't he? A camera store.
Just outside of LA.
I had to drive into LA a couple of weeks ago, and it's I think it's Eagle Rock.
Eagle Rock, yeah.
It's kind of part of that whole. It is LA, it's that whole kind of area. It's huge, but I didn't have quite enough time. I was going to swing by there, but because I didn't really. There's nothing I wanted to buy, but it looked like a really cool store.
Yeah. I know him from skateboarding days. So I know him from the late 80s.
He was a skateboarder, wasn't he?
He was one of the best pro street skaters of the time.
Yeah.
And then became an actor through Kevin Smith. So I'm going to send him an email and try to see if I can get an hour or so of his time and hear his story from his journey from being a skateboarder through an actor into photography. And he loves doing the road trips as well. And
he seems like he's a good guy, and he's a serious photographer. He's a good photographer,
Yeah, bought his first ever camera here in Vancouver, Canada.
Cool.
Yeah, when he's filming a movie. So, man, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tyson. Yeah.
Sorry?
I get people when I'm out on the street. So I'm set up with a table and I've got prints there, on display. And tons of people come to New York. I'm in Soho and people from all over the world. And I've had more than once, I've had someone walk by and they stop and they're like, I follow you on Instagram. They recognize the pictures and it's like, it's cool.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Tyson.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our chat, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, and discover even more stories from the community over competition movement. Have a great day.